Please rewind this cassette.
Alright guys, I'm going to be reviewing The Boys Season 2, Episode 4, Nothing Like It in the World, which I have to say overall I was pretty disappointed in, just in comparison to last season, and its Episode 4 being one of the highlights of the whole season, which if you don't remember, that was the plane sequence episode. And I thought because this was the halfway point in the season and because this episode was over an hour long, that this was going to be a big episode with things happening throughout and just a lot of plot twists and turns and action scenes. I'm not saying I needed a bunch of action to be satisfied. And honestly, I think The Boys works best when it's not an action show. However, saying that, I wasn't expecting this to be such a... You know, it was just kind of one of those episodes of a television show where you're just spending time with the characters, and it's a character episode. I'm not acting like big things didn't happen in this episode, because they certainly did. But my concerns with Season 2, based off the first 3 episodes, were not helped with this one. I don't love this episode. I'm not saying it's bad. There's a lot of good stuff here, and overall, I still really dig the show, but... this makes me question the longevity of the show in a way that I haven't questioned before, because some of the things they're doing, I'm thinking to myself, how can you keep the story going much longer with some of the characters, in particular with Butcher? So we're going to be getting into spoilers here, so don't even watch this if you haven't seen the episode yet. This episode kind of has this playing thread throughout of it that is, I took it as sort of as an homage to the When Harry Met Sally interview with the couples, but at the end you find out that it's the Deep interviewing women to marry him in order to fix his image with the public in order to get back to the Seven. So that was a fun thing to do, and it sort of set up a thematic idea in here, which is the dynamics between people and relationships, and this has to do with Starlight and Huey's relationship, fathers with daughters, family. Obviously the relationship Homelander had with Elizabeth Shue's character, who, when he goes to that cabin out in the middle of the woods and she's alive, I'll say I was completely confused when that first happened. I go, what the fuck, she's alive? I don't know why it didn't occur to me. I thought it might have been a dream sequence, and then when they revealed that it was Doppelganger, I was like, that makes total sense. And I actually think it was one of the... maybe my favorite thing about this episode was the idea that Homelander has Doppelganger pretend to be her so he can go out there and have him rub milk in his lips. And I'm assuming, I don't know, but it seems like they have sex, and then he lays his head on her lap. They're watching Taxi Driver together. That was so fucked up and weird. And Homelander doing that makes him so weird and bizarre, and it's a thing in the show does that other shows just wouldn't do. And I really like that. I especially like how it ends. We'll get to that later, but the last sequence of this episode I was very amused by. The majority of this episode is Billy going to find his wife, which I didn't think would happen so early on. I thought that would be near the end of the season, but here we are only 12 episodes into the show, and Billy's reunited with his long-lost wife. I mean, they are making love, they're smoking cigarettes, and he's making an escape plan for her. And there lies one of my issues with where the show's going. I'm having a hard time with the believability of certain things, and I know you're like, well, this is a show about superheroes, what are you talking about? But I could always buy a lot of things, and the superhero stuff doesn't bother me because that's just the logic of this universe. But that Billy was able to even get in there, and at the beginning of this season, it's established that Huey and Frenchie and Butcher all wanted, so they shouldn't be out in public. Butcher even goes to a restaurant at one point, and his face is on TV. And in this episode, there's lots of scenes where Huey's just out in public, and nobody's noticing him. And it's like, okay, I can get that to some level, but the fact that nobody seems to care about their safety anymore, or that him and Starlight aren't even really being that discreet, it just feels like they're being a little loose with the writing all of a sudden. I don't think the scripts are as tight as they were in the first season so far. I don't think episode 3 was pretty good, but I don't think one episode of this current season is as sharp as the best episodes of season 1, which was bound to happen because they're introducing us to the world and a lot of things happen in the first season, so you have to move all these pieces together. I really did like the road trip between Huey and Starlight and Mother's Milk, and them going to find the woman who tells the backstory about her brother getting murdered by a superhero, who turns out in the plot twist was Stormfront, who doesn't age, and is older than we thought she was, and has been doing acts of terror and racism longer than we thought. And the scene of his face being beaten in was truly disturbing and interesting, because at first when they do the whole thing with the backstory and it's racist, I go, well, this is weird that you just kind of throw this in there. And then when they connected it to the Stormfront thing, I was like, okay, now this all makes a lot more sense. This actually has purpose, and this isn't just a random one-off of like, well, no, look, this has been going on for a while. Different superheroes were doing this kind of stuff. Because I almost took it as that they were trying to make some kind of statement, but then that clearly wasn't the case, which I very much liked. And there was a lot of nice details in this road trip. The story that he tells Starlight about his father going to get ice cream, how she notices his OCD, her and Huey getting back together for a little while, them singing along to "We Didn't Start the Fire" on the radio in the car. All of those things I really enjoyed. In particular, Homelander on the side of a barn with his cape as a Confederate flag. The thing about the show that's always on point is the world building and the aesthetics and the visual gags like that. When Homelander is scrolling through a bunch of memes on the internet that is mocking him and praising Stormfront, that is just absolutely on point. It seems completely accurate that's exactly the memes that would exist. Like, the people who write the show, or at least work on that side of the show, which I'm assuming is like a graphic designer or the special effects team or something like that, they do a phenomenal job with that satire and just making it feel like it's part of our world. That's absolutely wonderful. And every joke like that in this movie, when they go on the talk show and they're confronted with, the 7 so white hashtag, and then Homelander exposes that Maeve is a lesbian and has a relationship. All of that is very relevant, and I like that they're not making political statements. They're just putting these characters in these situations that are situations people are being put in our real world, celebrities and whatnot, and companies and stuff like that, and seeing how our characters deal with it, which are these people that are just, for the most part, a lot of the characters in the show that we follow are very self-obsessed, and they're only in it for their own interest. A lot of interesting things happen. A-Train being kicked out of the 7. How's that going to play out later? Is A-Train now going to assist Starlight, perhaps, and the boys in taking down the 7? I like the scenes with Butcher and his wife. I like seeing them together, but that feels like that happened so quick, and I didn't like how everything connected there, because I like that they confirmed, at least she said, that she was raped by Homelander. But I also just don't get this whole, I can tell that you wouldn't like the kid and you would try to get rid of him, and then Butcher's like, well, yeah, he's $1 billion experiment, and if we take him with us, they're gonna hunt us down and try to get him. Because I see both points of view. I get where she's coming from because it's her son, but Butcher has a pretty good point there. And I honestly think that she doesn't give him enough benefit of the doubt. I don't like that she just decides not to go with him because I see it in your eyes that you would try to get rid of him. And I understand that, but it just, I don't know, the writing wasn't so tight to me, that whole thing, that, I think maybe they could have had a bit more with that. It just felt very rushed. Like, okay, he goes there, he spends time with her, they have the argument about the kid, and then she leaves him there. So within these 4 episodes, we have Butcher not in the team. Then he rejoins the team for 2 episodes. Then he leaves the team again in this episode. And then what, is he going to rejoin the team again in episode 5? It's just like, I don't know, it just isn't great, that to me. It's hard to completely articulate, but I don't like the way that they're rushing through those storylines. I feel like that storyline should be fleshed out a little bit more. And some of it's it being in 8 episodes. Really didn't have any issue with anything with Homelander. Homelander continues to be the best part of the show. They're really good at writing Homelander, and Anthony Starr can pretty much make any scene work that he's in. And there's something sort of cerebral and fascinating about everything that he does. You don't really 100% know why he does things. You don't completely understand the character. You're scared of the character, and he creates a lot of the tension in the show. When he's threatening to, basically kill Starlight in the elevator, and then, he figures out she isn't lying when she says that Huey broke her heart, and she just doesn't want to be a cold-blooded killer. All of that stuff's really interesting, and stuff that I really like. Also, Starlight, fantastic character, has consistently been very interesting through the show. I love the actress. I love every scene with her and Huey. I think they're very cute together. I really like what she's going through. She feels real. And, even the thing with the candy bar and the vending machine, all of that stuff worked really well for me. So I'm not saying this was bad. Like, this wasn't a bad episode of the show, and it wasn't a bad piece of television. But it just felt like more needed to happen. Sort of the energy of the first season was that there was just so much plot, and there were so many things going on in every episode, and there were so many funny gags and stuff like that. This doesn't quite have that, this episode. I'm not saying the whole season. But this episode itself, I felt like it was missing something. It was missing some kind of gut punch. If the big gut punch is supposed to be the final moment with Homelander, that's a very cool, interesting moment. I get that his character's growing, and his confrontation with Stormfront before that, where he puts his laser eyes on her, and she's like, listen, dude, I'm just trying to help you. You're not adapting to the modern times. You're spending $273 million on this campaign, and I'm spending nothing and building a fan base. She says soldiers with the internet. And you need to learn how to do that. You can't want everybody to love you. This isn't like the 50s. You can't be this idealized version. You have to accept that you have your fans, and you're going to have people that hate you, and that's okay. Which was very interesting commentary. And I think played in well to the show's strengths. But having said all that, I just think with the Butcher storyline, I feel like they don't really know what to do with Butcher right now. And I feel like Huey's sort of treading water too as a character, even though I really love the actor. It's like now that the conflict isn't about his father and him getting into this whole thing that he wasn't part of before, and getting in this relationship with Starlight. Like, do you remember when they go to that religious gathering in the first season, and Huey goes to get baptized by Homelander, and it's just this really creepy moment, and then he tells Starlight that, like, no, you are a superhero. That's what's so amazing about you. And he kind of sees through the bullshit of stuff and starts to convince her of it too as she's becoming more skeptical. That was just really good stuff, and he just isn't having those sort of moments anymore just because of where the storyline is. You can't really write those things. So you're sort of just focused on what's going on with Homelander and if he's going to kill people or not, and Starlight's character, and then some of the other characters, but I really don't care about Queen Maeve's girlfriend. It's not bad, but it's not great either. I don't really care about Frenchie anymore, which is upsetting because I loved the character of Frenchie in the first season, but just this episode, he just does a bunch of coke. He tries to kiss Kimiko, and then he goes and hooks up with his old girlfriend, and then at the end, Kimiko's going to go attack Stormfront, and then he stops her. Once again, just being out in public, these wanted people, and nobody notices them. It just feels like there's no cause and effect here. Like, if you're going to set up that they can't go out in public because they're wanted, I feel like there has to be some sort of payoff to that. Like, they do go out in public and they get captured. I mean, that would have been an interesting thing in this episode. What if something happened to Kimiko and Frenchie? Like, what if they were taken in by Vought and none of the other boys were aware of that because they were off doing their own things? So then we have that storyline to follow. I don't know. I just feel like it needed that sort of thing to it, because all we're really getting is more establishing of Stormfront being a racist, an older character that we know, and we don't totally know what her motives are. Is she completely with Homelander? Does she want to work with him? Is she trying to overthrow Vought? Is she in it for herself? We don't know, so that's interesting. But this just felt like one of those, like every TV show has typically. I'm not going to say it was a filler episode because it wasn't, but it's just that middle ground episode that isn't one of the highlights of a season, but it isn't like a bad episode. It's just kind of there to give us a little bit of character development, although I don't think there was too much, and a little bit of the story moving forward and give us a little bit more of the world so it can set up things for later. But I just wonder now, how long can the show run if Butcher's already found his wife? Because now I'm getting worried that the show's going to be running in circles where, okay, she stays there, but then she does get out, and then him and her get lost and separated again, or they have the kid with them, and the kid's the only one that could take out Homelander. You know, how long can you keep that storyline running? What if the show runs 6 seasons or something like that? And then, yeah, with Huey, like, how is he going to keep moving forward? I feel like Huey hasn't made a big step forward in a long time. I feel like he's just been kind of going in circles. There's only a few characters I feel like have had real growth. And last season, I felt like all the characters surprised me and grew and changed throughout the entire season. And it was just more compelling that Billy was wanting revenge and trying to kill Homelander, and Elizabeth Shue's character with Homelander was interesting, and Huey coming into this world that he wasn't aware of, and Starlight, and we're getting introduced to the world by these characters. All of that was just so fascinating. Even A-Train having his girlfriend, and they're drug addicts, and he has to kill her. All of that stuff was just so good. And I was really expecting this episode to have stuff like that in, and it really didn't. It was more of a, you know, let's just keep going along because we have to, sort of thing, because we have to fit 8 episodes. So yeah, I just don't totally love what they're doing with Frenchie. I don't like what they're doing with a lot of the characters right now. I don't think they're doing much with them in general. And while the humor is still on point, the visuals are still on point, the acting is still great, and everything that's going on is still really entertaining, I don't know if it's as interesting. I'm not as engaged as I thought I would be at this point. You know, we're halfway through the season, and I don't really have a good sense of where this is going or what the end goal is, or if we're really going to have anything that interesting happen by the end of the season. I'm really hoping that the last, 2 episodes, or especially the finale, will be great, and then all of this will just seem worth it so we could get to that episode where a lot of things are happening. That's what I'm thinking, is that they know they don't have quite enough story to fill out every episode, so maybe they're just waiting for everything in the last episode. That's where they're going to throw in all the stuff you've been waiting for. It could just be a slow burn season. You know, Game of Thrones did this every year. It was a slow burn, and then the last 2 episodes of the season, all these big things would happen, and you'd be like, all right, cool. Now I'm ready for the next season. Everything would get shifted again, and everything would get moved around, and then you have to start from a new place next season. So I could totally see that happening. And I think that Eric Kripke is clever enough to figure out something like that as a showrunner. Going back to the Homelander stuff, though, the end scene where he goes back to Doppelganger after the conversation with Stormfront, and he just, you know, rejects it, and he's like, I don't need you, I don't need anybody. And then Doppelganger, in this fascinating scene, turns into Homelander and is like, you want this? And it's this great sequence, which I wish the show had more stuff like this. You know, it feels like a lot of the sexual content has been really, cut down as opposed to the first season. You know, like the Deep getting finger raped in his gills. You know, a lot of the stuff that was really hardcore, the chick just, you know, smashing the guy's head in with her vagina. There just isn't anything like that as much. Or was it her ass? Was he eating her ass? I don't totally remember. But there was these crazy moments. And there's been a lot less of that now that I'm thinking about it. Just as sexuality. There's been gore. But it's not quite as stimulating, I suppose, as it was before. Although still very, very well done. And very edgy and entertaining and worth watching. But that last sequence, yeah, where he's like, I'm gonna suck your dick and you're gonna come and look into your own eyes, I really liked that a lot. And Homelander killing Doppelganger, which honestly seems like a waste, because I think Doppelganger's a pretty useful person to have on your side, because he can turn into anybody. So that's a good person to have to pull, like they used him in the first season. But Homelander kills him, so I don't know where this puts Homelander. Is Homelander going to take Stormfront's advice? I assume so. and now he doesn't need the family. He's already abandoned the family with the kid. He tried to re-team with the Seven. That didn't work out. So then he goes to his last thing, and he doesn't have that. So is he just in a place now where he's going to be completely even more evil and self-centered? And how is this going to affect the other characters in the show? I do like what they're doing with A-Train. I feel like that's going somewhere. And I really like everything between Stormfront and Homelander, and I think that's either going to end up with them teaming up, or there's going to be a big conflict at the end of the season. But I think you should keep racking up the tension between the two of them. I don't like the idea of them just teaming up and then they're two villains. I would like the idea of the boys are trying to take down Vought and the Seven, and then there's also things going on between the Seven themselves. They have things going on that... Because I'm noticing a thread here that Butcher's getting himself sort of pushed away from the boys and everyone. You know, I think about it this way. There's this parallel, because this is about bigotry and your biases, that Stormfront's a bigot, a racist. Butcher can't get over his bias towards superheroes, and he can't let those things go, and sort of his narrow vision and his violent tendencies. And so there's a lot about that. The characters don't want to sacrifice or change. And also the thing that Butcher gets abandoned by his wife and is left alone. Huey gets, basically Starlight, from what I got, she dumped him at the end of the episode. And then Homelander choosing to cut off all ties with everybody, so he's distanced himself from all of his friends. The Deep's gone. A-Train, who told him what was going on last season and worked for him, he pushes him away. Starlight's not on his side, obviously. Maeve has consistently been scared of him, and now she really is in a tense situation because he knows about the one thing she really didn't want him to know about. So he kind of has everyone against him, right? And Butcher's in the same place where he's ruined his team and not really been there for them because he's only been focused on this one thing, and now he doesn't even have that to fall on. So they're both isolated characters due to their lack of willingness to work with others and to listen to other people and have collaboration, to not just have things their way. This whole season, Homelander won't listen to anyone else's ideas or bring anything in. It has to be what he thinks. He thinks he's smarter than everybody, and he always has the right idea. And for a while, the show convinced you that was pretty on point. Last season, everything he did seemed pretty smart. But this season, we're seeing that fold back on him, where he thinks all of the things he's doing is right, but it's not really working out that way. The Stormfront is getting the public reaction that he was expecting to get with his decisions. Just like Butcher, I think, thought he could just come in and take his wife away and everything would work out. But they're learning that they have to compromise on some things, and that's going to be their downfall if they're not willing to do that. So that's a very interesting theme, and I think it could end up in a very cool place where Butcher and Homelander aren't that different, and they're both going to be in situations where their teams that they thought they trusted so much are ultimately turned against them, and then they don't have anybody, and they either have to humble themselves and realize they need help, or they just will be destroyed by their own hubris. Also, Black Noir going to the girl who last year Homelander was like, I can do whatever the fuck I want. He now knows where Butcher was at. He also, I don't know if he was aware of the facility where they were keeping Butcher's wife. I'm going to guess no. So where's this going to go? Is this Black Noir versus Butcher sort of thing? Or does this mean that Black Noir is going to now go to where Ryan is and find out about Homelander having a kid? Which is going to tie into things, because I mean, I don't really know where they're going with that. I'm assuming they're going to have it be Black Noir's looking for Butcher, but I think it would be interesting if this somehow ties into the family, and then Homelander even gets involved with it, because as far as we've known so far, Homelander just loves Black Noir. He's the one member of the Seven that Homelander's like 100% on with everything. He's like, you're a great guy, you've always been doing great. He pats him on the back. He's like, go get him, buddy. And Black Noir's been a great character, so I would like to see more of Black Noir. I like that he has these little one-offs as the Batman character, but it would be nice to get more of a storyline with Black Noir. I think that would be pretty cool. Apparently Kimiko just wants revenge on Stormfront. Maybe she'll get it, maybe she won't. I don't know if that's what they're setting up. And yeah, Frenchie, I think they've just lost the plot with entirely. Very disappointed with the writing of Frenchie, because I loved Frenchie in the first season. I thought he was one of the best parts of the show. But where they're kind of lacking in him, they're making up for it with other characters. It's just different perspectives. I hope the stuff with the Deep is going somewhere fun. But I gotta say, just overall, this episode, not one of my favorite episodes of the show. I don't think it was a great episode. I think it was pretty good. And I think overall it had a lot of funny side gags and visual gags and just weird moments. And I was never bored or anything like that. I enjoyed it. But I never thought there was any great line of dialogue or any single moment that was so great that it made the episode really stand out as a classic, except maybe the last scene with Homelander essentially killing himself and saying, "I don't need you," which is maybe saying he doesn't need himself. I don't know if that's what they were trying to put across. But I do feel like the writing just isn't super strong in this episode. And I think that there's questionable some of the plotting and some of the conveniences that the characters are having, or things that I thought were established that don't seem to be followed up on in this episode. But it was still, it's still The Boys. It's still, a show that I love to fucking watch. But now that you have to wait every week, this was like a painful reminder of what it was like to wait for a show every week. And then sometimes you get that episode that's just okay, and you're like, oh god, now I gotta wait another fucking week to see this. Where if you'd been binging this show and you got to this episode and you were like, okay, I didn't love that episode, but I'm just gonna watch episode 5 now and keep moving on, I think it would have played a lot better. But I think now that you're waiting for every episode, it's like how most TV shows used to be. I mean, or shows that are still on HBO or something like that. You get hyped up for the next episode. And not every episode's an A episode. Some episodes are B+ episodes. So then you're like, okay, that was good. And then you're waiting for those big episodes, which I'm hoping will happen. But overall, I'd give this a 7.5 out of 10. Solid episode of the show, but one of my least favorites overall, excluding a few moments that I think people are going to talk about and say how great they were, and I agree with all of you guys. The Homelander Confederate flag thing, the end scene, the talk show moment, all that stuff is great. There are moments like that are really good. But the episode as a whole, I think, is a lesser episode of the show overall. So I'm hoping that episode 5 next week can really bounce back and get me pumped again, because right now I'm just losing excitement for where this is going, and I'm not as tense about anything like I used to be. I don't really feel a sense of danger with a lot of the characters like I did before, and I just don't even, everything just doesn't seem like Vought and the media and Stormfront, all of it just feels like it's too open, and it doesn't really have a clarity to it that it should have. And this is exactly what's going on, and what should be building the tension episode to episode, that you're waiting for some bomb to go off. I just don't feel like that's there right now. And this episode slowed things down quite a bit, which surprised me, because I thought the show would just kind of keep this fast pacing. But this has been a slower season, and maybe they're setting up a lot of things for a really fast and action-packed or a different kind of season 3. Shows do this. I remember Lost, the first season was great, and then season 2, when you go to the hatch with Desmond, you're like, what the fuck is this? And then it kind of doesn't totally work, and then season 3 and 4 happen, and they're really entertaining, and they introduce all these new characters and new storylines. And so, that could be how this show goes, where like this is the slower season, and then season 3, we're getting everything, like maybe everything this season, they're just setting up Stormfront for next season. They're just setting up everything with Butcher and his wife. Maybe it's all going to have a big payoff later in the show, and just not in this current season. And if that's the case, that's fine. Maybe this will just be the season of the show that we're all like, yeah, that wasn't the best season, but it was a good season. And then, wow, the season after that was amazing. That just might be where this is going. I mean, Breaking Bad, if you remember, there was that whole thing with the Flash the flash forwards to something terrible was going to happen to Walter White, you know, at the pool, and you see the stuffed animal floating and you're like, oh my god, what's going to happen? That's amazing. And then you get to the payoff at the end and it's the girl's father, who he kills with the heroin overdose, is an air traffic controller, and then a plane crashes and then the stuff falls in the... It's like, really? All that buildup, and that's what the fuck... I mean, that was almost a jump the shark moment for Breaking Bad. It really was, like... That was a little too far. So, it happens. It happens with shows all the time. So far, the show hasn't jumped the shark for me, but I'm also not as satisfied as I was expecting to be at this point. I really hope... I'm not saying you have to top the plane sequence in season 1 or things like that, but you got to give me something to chew on. I mean, what I liked about the show is that it did have that Game of Thrones quality where, like, anybody could die. I mean, it's time to start killing off some people. There's too many characters. There just is. There's too many characters, and you can't be in love with all of them, and some of them are pointless. Like, if you don't have anything to do with Frenchie, if you you have nowhere for him to go, you have to kill him. And it sucks because I love Frenchie, but if he has no purpose in the story anymore, you got to kill the guy. Or kill someone even bigger than that. You got to, I mean, it's time for some people to die. I mean, in the first season, early on, Translucent dies, and you're like, wow, the shit's getting real. And I'm getting that feeling with this show. Like, it's time to start, you know, and I don't do the Walking Dead thing where you kill so many characters it becomes meaningless after a while, but I think it's time to kill off one of the leads, whoever that may be. I think there's too many characters and they don't know what to do with all of them, and it's time to get this a little bit more focused and keep introducing the new characters like Stormfront that are interesting and make more room for them, because last season I really liked everybody and I was interested what happened to everybody. Right now I'm sort of like, some of these people aren't really serving a purpose to the story for me, and either you kill them or you have something happen. I don't know, but I feel like, yeah, I need some death. I don't know, something's gonna happen. Something's got to pay off here. Something bad has to happen to somebody because of a decision they made. And here's hoping that episode 5, 6, 7, 8 this happens, because if it's all just about them finding out that Stormfront's been around longer than she was, and she's a Nazi, and she's a real villain, and that Homelander has no friends, I guess. That's the thing, I just don't know where it's going. And it's not in that way where it's like, ooh, I have no idea where the storyline's going. It's like, okay, why is this important? Why is this all happening? Because I really need this to go somewhere, or else it's all just going to feel like it was sort of like filler, entertaining filler, but filler nonetheless. So I'll see you guys for the next episode, and I don't want you guys to think I'm negative on this or anything. This is my favorite show on right now, but I'm just saying this just wasn't a great episode. There was like an episode or two in the first season I didn't love either, so it's not just... I think the first season's perfect, but this is like that episode for me this year. I really dug the first 3 episodes. Sort of disappointed in this one. Was expecting a lot more.